My name is Stephen Nasser. My wife, Françoise Nasser. We have been traveling and invited all over the world, I should say. We have been in Europe, in the American continent, in Mexico. Today, it is my 1086th lecture. Thank you, Ryan.
View of the book. That'd be very nice.
The year was 1941. We lived in the Nasser house in Budapest, Hungary. My grandfather established the house in 1872. My father, Deja, my mother, Georgia, my brother, Andris, and me, Istvan, but everybody called me Pista. We were very happy during those years in the Nasser house. I looked up to my brother. He was my guiding light. I adored him. I remember I was very happy when he got a brand new fishing rod and I inherited his old bamboo rod, which was taped together with an electric tape. But we caught fish anyway, and we used to go home with great joy. And my mother fried the fish what we ate. We were the pride of our family. I always remember those days, and I kept it in my memory, locked in forever. 1943 came, and the Nazis marched in, when our beautiful life came to a crushing end. When they took us away from our home, we were taken in the outskirts of Budapest, in a brick factory called Budafok. And one morning, I saw my Uncle Deja, his name was. He was killed by a Nazi in front of our eyes. Awful days, the first killing. We didn't know what was coming on. Until one day we saw trains are coming into the brick factory, and we knew we were going to be taken away from Budapest, my birthplace. We were separated from the family, mother, my little cousin, my aunt, and with my brother, I was lucky to end up in the same cattle car. When the Nazis came in, they took us into boxcars, just like what you see. Here is an actual picture of the Hungarian Jews being herded away in cattle cars, approximately 80 people to one cattle car. As we entered into the cattle car, the last two persons were given a metal bucket about this size. One bucket was full of water, the other bucket was empty for human waste, sewage. We took these buckets, the last two people, and about 80 of us crammed into a boxcar. Can you imagine just about the amount of people we have here? It took approximately 4 or 5 days before we arrived to Auschwitz. Every day the train stopped, they give us fresh water, they give us just enough food to survive, but nobody would empty the bucket. That was our punishment. When the door slid open, I tried to stand up and take a deep breath of fresh air. I did. It was awful. The air smelled so foul, I had to back in to the sewage-ridden car. Why? What were these gray, greenish smog covering over Auschwitz? But the gas chamber killed so many people, the crematorium couldn't keep up with it. All these thousands of extra bodies, the Nazis burned over a bonfire, burning human flesh. That's what was covering all over Auschwitz, and that's what we smelled. I went into my pocket, I pulled out a little pocket knife, and slowly I put the knife behind me, and I shoved it up where the sun did not shine. I didn't realize at that time, because of this maneuver, I would be able to write my diary. Had no connection. My brother and I, we were standing at the platform when we were ordered to get off the train, and we did. But before we did, Andris looked out and he said to me excitedly, "Pista, look over there. It looks like Mom and Bougie, little Peter." And he was right. We pushed our way through the crowd. We did join Mom and Bougie. Little Peter was a toddler. He was about 15 months old. He was hanging onto Mother's fingers. We were very happy to see each other, but my aunt, she was petrified. She said, "If the Nazis think I'm going to separate from my baby, I'm going to fight for his and my life." We tried to encourage her, give her hope, and we told her, "Aunt Bougie, apparently we're going to be here for a long time, waiting for inspection. But when inspection comes, why don't you pick up little Peter, hold him in your arms, and pretend you are breastfeeding him?" She thought it was a good idea. This was the situation. My aunt, with baby Peter in her arm, standing in front of me. I was behind her. Then my mom and Andris. Mother was between us. And this is what I saw. Inspection started, and one Nazi bully rushed over to my aunt to grab the baby from her arm. She wouldn't let him go. The Nazi pulled, Mother held him back. Can you imagine that 15-year-old youngster? He was already scared and crying. By now he was screaming his lungs out. He was being torn apart. The Nazi was stronger. Eventually, he got the baby. He put the baby on his shoulder. He was screaming and crying, and he started to walk away with the baby. My aunt could not move because a Nazi was holding her from behind, restraining her to go after the baby. But she put up a death struggle. Finally, she was able to get away from the Nazi's grip. She ran after the one carrying the screaming baby. This Nazi, as he was carrying the baby, he heard the commotion. He stopped for a second and he just turned back. He was face to face with my aunt. My aunt took her sharp fingernails, attacked his face, made a bloody mess of his face. The blood splat on the innocent child also. But in a split second, the Nazi whose grip she got away from, he was right behind her. He took his revolver. He didn't shoot. There were crowds of people. He took the revolver by the muzzle and with the butt struck my hand so hard, the back of the skull, it cracked open. She fell to the ground. I thought she was dead. I hope she was dead, that she didn't see what happened afterwards. The Nazi with the bleeding face rushed over to the boxcar where we disembarked from. He threw the baby up in the air. He caught the baby by the feet, put baby's body behind his shoulder, and he swung his body, his head crushed right against the wagon wheel. It was awful. I can never forget it. Within a half an hour, we were herded towards some other cattle cars, and we were taken away to a forced labor camp unknown to us. Finally, we arrived to a place called Mühldorf. It was the work camp of Dachau. When we got separated from Mom, we had a feeling we're never going to see her again.
Dachau, factory of horrors, one of the oldest of the Nazi prison camps. It is known that from 1941 to 1944, up to 30,000 people were entombed here at one time. The Nazis said it was a prison for political dissenters, habitual criminals, and religious enthusiasts.
But the workplace when we arrived the following day, it was enormous. It's like a huge hangar made out of cement and rebar wires. The roof was close to 15 feet thick. We had to work very hard. Andris and I carried many cement bags, and many of us collapsed under its weight. Others were carrying the heavy cement sacks. I watched how people take the torn cement paper bags at night and carry them back into our barracks. And I had one idea. What would be if I could make a journal? I was wondering, am I going to survive? Are we going to survive? I had no guarantee. And I wanted to write down my thought, my experience, how much I missed Mother and the family, what Andris and I and others had to go through, all the beatings. Maybe it would be too much for paper and pencil, but at least if I could put it down, I would leave some facts which has happened to us, what the world has not known before. And I decided to write the journal.
Pista, if they catch us with this diary, they'll kill us both.
Andris, everything's gonna be fine. The plan's ingenious. I mean, look at how garbage these drawings are. No one's gonna want to look at this.
Still, Pista, I'm just worried.
Andris, this diary needs to be shared with the world. No one can forget what's happened here. Neither can I. I need to be able to remember what happened every single day so that this injustice can live on, so that this will never happen again.
Then promise me this. You will share our whole story with the world.
Andris, I promise nothing will be forgotten. Andris, I promise you, everything's gonna be okay.
It was around March 1945. One morning, when the whistle blew, We had to get up and we had to go to work. Unfortunately, Andris couldn't get out of bed. He was too sick. I had to go without him. I felt abandoned. I felt alone. I wanted to see his face and share my experience, how it was without him for a day. I got shocked when I walked into the barrack. Andris' bed was empty, only the straws. I asked my barrack commander, "What happened to my brother, Andris?" He said, "Well, you should know. If he cannot work, we took him to death barracks." To me, that was a challenge, and I tried to figure out how I can rescue him. Death barrack was still within our compound. That particular Sunday coming up was one Sunday a month we had off. I did find death barracks. I went around asking, Andris Nasser, where are you?" I was frantic. Finally, towards the end, when I said, Andris Nasser, where are you?" One of the prisoners, like a skeleton under the blanket, he started to sit up very, very slowly with his eyes closed. Then he opened his eyes. Beautiful blue eyes. Nobody else had eyes like that. "Andris, I'm here to rescue you." Andris looked up and said, "Dear God, thank you. I knew Pista would come before I die." I replied, "Andris, you're not going to die. I have some food for you. You're going to come back with me, and we will be liberated soon. I can hear the guns far away getting closer." Then I begged the person beside him and we changed places. I slid beside Andris. I put his head on my arm. I looked into his beautiful blue eyes and I said, "Andris, I love you." He said, "I love you too, my little brat." Then I looked at him again. "Andris, blink, say something." Andris couldn't. Andris died right in my arms. I screamed out, "I know you up in heaven with the others until we meet again." And at last, I took my 2 fingers, pulled his eyelids down, and let my brother, who I love so much, on his own. I had to return to reality, to my barracks, to prove to Andris I will survive and keep my word, to talk to people, to share my diary, and make sure I give him the message, the appreciation of freedom and the appreciation of family. I did share with the audience how I felt when I was bullied, when I had the yellow star on. And I do challenge the people who bully others. I do ask them, do you realize you can be potential killers? You know what I would give from my life? If I could hug my mother, my dad, my brother again, I would give half my life, but I can't. They've been killed by Nazi bullies. And I make the student know it is their choice. You see these hands? Let me see your hands. Let me see your hands. This hand can hurt, or this hand can help. It's entirely up to you. And then when it comes to a conclusion, I get down and I tell them to stand all up, to hold hands like a chain, and they look up on the screen where it says freedom is not free. And then Francois and I, we break the chain of hands and we join them. All of them to repeat, never again.
Never again.
Thank you very much. God bless America and God bless you all. Thank you. After liberation, back in Hungary, I returned into the Nasser house. I met my uncle, Charles. My uncle was very happy to see me. Pista, it's so nice to have you back. At least you arrived out of the family of 20-some odd. But please tell me, what happened to my baby and my wife? That struck me like lightning. I looked into his face and I said, Uncle Charles, I'm sorry. I do not know what happened because we got separated in Auschwitz. That was a big lie. For 50 years, I kept it a secret. It was in my diary. I could not share the diary with anyone for 50 years to protect my uncle. In 1996, my uncle passed away. That was, in a way, my second liberation, that I was free to share the promise I give my brother, to share my diary with the public. And I did start lecturing, and of course, I wrote my diary into a book. Since 1997, I had my first engagement in Pahrump. That was our first lecture. To me, it was very important. I went around schools all over the world, over 1,000 occasions, with the help of my wife, Francoise, who was like a solid rock, support me all the time. I shared my experience with the public, with the students. It made us feel so good to receive all those thousands of letters from students, how I changed their life, how they make appreciate the family what they had instead of take it for granted, how they appreciate the morning when they wake up.
Oh, do you remember this one?
Oh, yeah.
To Mr. Nasser, I thank you so much for saving my life. I remember when I met you at Sierra Vista Middle School, that was the first time I ever met someone from the Holocaust. Through different areas of my life, I tried taking my own life because I was being bullied. And I had a lot of people tell me that everyone could be happy if I died. And I actually listened to them And now that I look back, I am glad that I did not, because after reading your book, I start to appreciate my life and actually start trusting God more, and you honestly saved my life. And you have become one of my biggest inspirations of all time. Thank you so much. Your family is looking down on you and so proud of you. I hope that I get to hear back from you soon. Truly, Kayla Ponce Garcia.
I tell him, why don't you go home? Show some appreciation to your family, even if you come from a broken home. Take your arm, throw it around your loved ones, and tell them, Mom, Dad, or whoever you are, I love you. You know something? That's the greatest gift you can give them. They will appreciate it. And I also challenge them further. If you have enough courage, take your arm once more, throw it around your beloved ones, and tell them, this hug is for Mr. Nasser, because he hasn't got a chance to hug his family. This is the last picture I have painted in watercolor. I wanted to paint Andris and myself. I finished most of myself, but Andris I never completed. I always wanted to finish it. Then something happened. I realized that picture, the way it is completed. Andris never had a chance to finish his life. That's why I consider this painting complete.